And the seasons, they go round and round, and the painted ponies go up and down. We're riding on a carousel of time. We keep returning to life anew, fulfilling our soul's aim, and go round and round and round in the circle game. Welcome back. I'm Rosanna Tufts, and this video is the follow-up to Only One Shot at Life, which in turn is the follow-up to What is Morality? If you haven't seen either of those, it might be a good idea to watch them first, because these 3 videos together form a logical sequence. In Only One Shot at Life, I examined some of the religious beliefs that arise from a foundational belief that one life in a physical body is all anybody ever gets, and then we're either damned to eternal punishment in hell or eternal bliss in heaven. Game over. Virtually all of today's most controversial beliefs and practices, forced birth, ensoulment at conception, and elimination of LGBTQ+ people, have their source in this one-shot theory. I ended that video by asking, where did this notion even come from anyway? Considering how different is the alternative belief from Hinduism, Buddhism, and most indigenous religions, namely that souls take on several physical incarnations by turns to experience what they most need to learn. Let's explore now what a wider acceptance of reincarnation might mean for healing this country's social ills. So, picking up from where we left off, the best short answer I could find, summarized in the Alpha Rho papers, as to why the Church Fathers rejected reincarnation as an official doctrine, is they decided that if everybody gets several chances at life,
then it reduces the importance of Christ's redemptive sacrifice.
Okay. If you really think life is that zero-sum? But how strong is your faith, really, if these ideas can't both be true? If you think they cancel each other out like some algebraic formula, the death and resurrection is going to be great regardless. It's not going to become irrelevant. And if you're that afraid of Jesus' death and resurrection seeming less important, what's the unintended consequence of the choice you have made? By emphasizing that so much, you've made Jesus' actual teachings correspondingly less important. You ever notice how the same people who demand that the 10 Commandments be posted in every public building don't ever want to see the Beatitudes given the same treatment? Jesus was the wokest man who ever lived, but he's too woke for them. Their counterfeit Christianity has almost no Jesus in it. And as for the concept of hell and eternal damnation for sinners, what Jesus called hell was actually a filthy, stinky valley south of Jerusalem, used for burning trash, called Gehenna. Because it was separated from the city and unfit for human habitation, it became a metaphor for being separated from God. He wasn't referring to an afterlife maximum security prison. That concept didn't exist yet. It took another millennium and a half for the modern belief in eternal hellfire to be fully cemented in the popular imagination and conflated with Gehenna. by the Westminster Confession of 1646, right during the time when prosecutors made common practice of ushering the condemned into infernos. They, too, were playing God. By then, the one-shot theory and its derivative of a binary afterworld had become a full-on mutation. The Reverend Jim Palmer, in 14 Things the Religious Establishment Doesn't Want You to Know, lists number 1 as toxic religion is rooted in fear, especially fear about the afterlife. It leverages the false doctrine of hell to win converts and demand holiness. The fear of God's disapproval, rejection, abandonment, and punishment is another hallmark of toxic religion. So what nuance does an understanding of reincarnation, notice I say understanding, not belief, bring to our perception of what's going on with souls that aren't yet solidified into physical matter? The one thing that both sides can agree on is that a soul needs a host body, a vehicle to ride in. While the biological process of an embryo or fetus is still going on, either in a petri dish or inside the womb, a soul may drift in and out of its body-to-be, but is not attached to it in any meaningful way until maybe a few weeks before labor is due to begin, when there's reasonable assurance that everything is working like it's supposed to. Have you ever heard of the thought experiment that asks, if you were rushing out of a burning hospital and you found a lost 5-year-old boy in a laboratory with an incubator full of 1,000 live embryos, but you can only rescue either the boy or the incubator? It's an easy choice. Instinctively, you know. The boy can feel the terror and excruciating pain of burning to death. The embryos cannot. You rescue the boy. Any souls who were floating around the incubator have probably already seen what is happening and have removed themselves from their embryos. If you rescue the incubator instead, and you believe in the pearly gates, odds are when you get there, St. Peter is gonna want to know why you didn't rescue the boy. You don't want to fail that test. To illustrate what ensoulment isn't, contrast it with the phenomenon of spontaneous spirit possession. I have direct personal experience with what it feels like to have another spirit entity come in and occupy you. Since I'm not Catholic, the Vatican will never count this as an official miracle of the Virgin Mary. But the story is real enough. I know what happened. The date was September 13th, 1998, one day after my own mother's 67th birthday. I was a professional soprano in an Episcopal church choir at the time, and it was our first day reporting for work after the summer break. In the few years I'd been working there, I made a practice of stepping behind the communion rail before rehearsal started, because that part of the church had a portal in it, with archangels standing guard. Normally, I would say hello to those archangels and scan the space to make sure it needed no psychic repairs. But on this day, as soon as I crossed that threshold, I suddenly felt like I was an elevator shaft, as another entity descended into my body and locked in place. I knew instantly who it was. When the Virgin Mary decides to put in a personal appearance, she has a very distinctive signature. There is no mistaking her for anybody else. My first thought was,
wait, what? What's she doing here? The Protestants have all but banished her from the worship.
You would think she'd be offended, but she wasn't. Time stopped. I don't know how long I just stood there, letting her occupy me. No indication as to why she was showing up now. But one thing was clear. She did not look anything like the insipid, submissive Madonnas of Renaissance art. This was the Black Madonna, whom I'd heard tell about as being worshipped in southern France. I'd never traveled there, but I recognized her anyway. Big and powerful, the Mother of God herself. Nobody else took any notice of me, or of her. No idea that anything unusual was going on, barely 3 feet away from them. Nobody turned to me and said,
"Are you okay?"
And then the choir master called us all to start the rehearsal. I had to step away from the connection, take my place in the choir stall, and Mary took the elevator shaft back up, whoosh, out of me again.
Okay. That was weird. Good thing I know my way around magic circles. If that had happened to anybody else, they'd have been completely freaked out.
But I still had no idea what she meant by possessing me for that time out of time. It wasn't until more than a week later when I realized I was late that a test confirmed, after heartbreaking years of fertility problems, I was finally pregnant at the ripe old age of 39. Now it made sense. The conception must have happened right at the start of September, only 2 weeks after I'd had my tubes cleaned out. Bam! Bam! Mary showed up to make for absolute damn sure this pregnancy was gonna stick. What happened that day was not the ensoulment of the embryo, not yet. That eventually became the 9 pounds, 9.2 ounce, one and only baby I ever bore, 1 week before my 40th birthday. It was divine intervention of a much larger entity, the Black Madonna herself, making a miracle happen and creating the conditions by which ensoulment could happen once the time was right. I got lucky only that one time, but once was all I needed. Yogananda, in his autobiography of a yogi, explains how karma, astrology, and reincarnation are all connected. The soul does not incarnate until the planets are aligned in such a way that provides the perfect crucible for what the soul needs to learn this time around. As soon as the umbilical cord is cut, your body is no longer symbiotic with your mother's, and it has to survive on its own. Bam! That starts the clock on your karmas. The challenge with this is that you have to go through life as a helpless baby first, which is going to make you forget. You will lose conscious awareness of why your soul is here. Not to mention all the people who will try to convince you your purpose is something else to fulfill their agenda. It may take decades for you to recover that knowledge. Even after the soul has attached, its connection to the body still isn't as rock solid as you think it ought to be. It travels to parallel dimensions in dreams. And trauma, especially protracted trauma, will cause pieces of soul to break off and hide somewhere in an other world where they can be safe from attack. But those pieces can't find their way back on their own. A specially trained soul searcher may have to retrieve them and restore them to the person to make them psychologically whole again. If a soul has had several incarnations in a row as one gender, then it makes sense that its masculine and feminine energies could be mixed or blurred in an in-between incarnation that's on the verge of another series of lives as the other gender. In my work as an astrologer, I have seen this happening in real time. In the horoscopes of transgender people who were born with male parts, not in all cases, but frequently, the energy of the chart is so heavily weighted towards masculine energy, you would think, wow, this person is the apotheosis of everything most men imagine they want. But on the inside, what it feels like for the person is that it's too much. They're coming into this life already with a supreme mastery of masculinity. What territory is there left to conquer? They're longing for the experience their soul hasn't yet had. Femininity. A feminine soul is buried deep within, but that's where the real juice is. Same goes for people who are born female, and their horoscopes are brimming over with feminine energy. You would think they grow up to be the most radiant, talented beauties ever, men and women alike in awe of them. But where's their hidden masculine? Now, most people try to integrate the energy that is most unlike themselves by marrying someone who embodies that side. Not for transgenders. Like the Chinese yin-yang symbol, the unintegrated opposite is a seed within themselves, just waiting for the chance to flip. For them, it's not enough to marry their opposite. They have to become it. They can't wait until their next incarnation to experience it. They have to embody it now. Like going through a wormhole and arriving in a completely different dimension on the other side. That's why transgenderism happens. It has nothing to do with some pedophile or a TV show brainwashing them, seducing them into sin. Why else would somebody do this, given the social cost involved, unless they're driven from within by a deep soul-level need? By the way, this is not something I learned from any of the astrology teachers I follow. I had this epiphany on my own. A flash of insight the first time I looked at Caitlyn Jenner's chart. You won't find it in any astrology books. In the case of trans men, I've met more than one whose life path seems to be a matter of becoming the model of positive masculine that they weren't getting from their fathers, uncles, brothers, maybe not even from their teachers or schoolmates. Since it wasn't already present in their environment, they had to find it within themselves. Not to mention someone who's too beautiful. Ha! Every lecher in town thinks they're fair game. Not saying that's true for every trans man, but if you think the collapse of traditional gender is immoral, maybe you ought to consider your assumption of how men and women normally are supposed to look, be, and act might not be all that healthy in the first place. And what if God didn't transfer any genetic material when he impregnated Mary? Ever consider that? If true, only Mary's physical chromosomes were involved in the conception, which of course would have been double X, not XY. Which would mean Mary gave birth to, genetically, a haploid female who lived as a male for social purposes. I'll admit that's a bit of a stretch, but it does expand the possibility that transgenderism is not so anti-Christian as you might think. The inner compulsion that creates transgenderism and the extreme soul solution that it requires also gives the lie to the poppycock notion that gayness is like a virus. If you get anywhere near a gay or trans person, or you read about them, or you see them on TV, YouTube, or TikTok, it'll put ideas in a child's head that it's cool or trendy for a boy to be effeminate or a girl to be butch. Ladies and gentle them, I was brought up in a world where nobody ever mentioned gayness. In my white bread town in the 1960s, gayness didn't even exist. Social contagion, or what's now called the woke mind virus, was not possible. In retrospect, it's obvious that my piano teacher, a lifelong bachelor, must have been gay, but not even my parents had the slightest clue. They never canceled my lessons with him. In fact, they were in ecstasies when he introduced them to the recordings of Luciano Pavarotti. The only media representation was Flip Wilson in drag as Geraldine, Harvey Korman in a few skits on The Carol Burnett Show, and Bugs Bunny fooling Elmer Fudd. All of those were played for laughs, not anywhere near enough exposure to infect a child. Other than that, I was so sheltered and naive, I never met a single gay person that I knew of until I was in my senior year of college, and I still ended up bi. Good thing I was 45 when it happened. My parents were both dead by the time I figured out I'd been bi my whole life. Would you believe it took a series of chiropractic adjustments to repair a back injury, to unleash a firestorm of hormones that pushed to the surface something that had been buried until then? I didn't have to wrangle with my parents or with anybody else about the validity of this. So my coming out was a source of pure joy. I was very fortunate in that way. Never regretted it for a minute. It's quite an experience to feel your capacity for love suddenly doubled. If you find that a little too hard to imagine, then just think of the Grinch's small heart expanding 3 sizes. To conclude, if you believe that one shot at life is all you get, what that does to your mind is you identify too much with the body your soul rode in on. You think you are your body. We are not this meat suit. The meat suit is merely a vehicle in which the soul can have its experience. Our souls are not our bodies any more than we are our cars. Eventually, those cars wear out, and we have to discard them, trade up for a new one. That's part of the reason why I was able to face stage 4 cancer with equanimity and without fear. Because my attachment to my body has less emotional charge than other people faced with the same crisis. You might find this hard to believe, but I recognized that the cancer was only trying to kill my body. It wasn't trying to crush my soul. With the end result, my soul proved tough enough to beat the disease. If you think my proposal is heresy, that word does not mean what you think it means. Heresy is when somebody actively works to divide a population into warring factions, exploiting the differences instead of trying to honor the desires of everyone involved. Who are the ones sowing division in this country? Who wants to deport and destroy anyone who disagrees with them? Who would actually welcome a civil war because they think they'll be the only ones left standing after the dust settles, and all the woke people are erased from existence in a mass genocide? Who want surveillance and martial law to prevent any woman from aborting an accidental pregnancy and jail anybody who helps them do it? I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. If you think that's freedom, Red Hats, be careful what you wish for. You may gain your 7 mountains, but lose the plot. You may regain your supposed lost dominance, only to find your macho fantasy cosplay ruling over a kingdom of ashes. I know, you can't stand the idea of a woman holding the greatest power in the land because it makes you feel like you're being treated like babies. Y'all better get over that shit right now and learn that true power is about empowering people of all kinds, not crushing them. You zealots are worried about the wrong things. You will literally call a car or a boat she, and then whine that pronouns reflect biological reality. Look at all of these amazing infinite galaxies God created, and this amazing planet we live on. And you're afraid God's going to be really mad at everybody on this little blue marble if even one of us is just a teensy bit gay, or a tableau of drag queens recreates a Christian artwork at the Olympics? That's the most degenerate thing that's wrong in the world, when millions of innocent children are starving in Gaza? Elizabeth Taylor said, "If you took away all of the art and music that have been made by gay people over the centuries, you would have so little left that whatever was left would hardly be worth having." And even the most rabid of fundamentalists has to admit, over the centuries, the threat of eternal damnation has not worked as a deterrent to abusive behavior. Not even close. Which brings us full circle back to the question of, what is morality? I should think a better motivation would be the realization,
If I don't get this right, I'll have to do it again in my next life. over and over and over, like Groundhog Day.
A little comedy which turned out to be surprisingly profound and accurate in its depiction of multiple chances to get life right. Can we just try that for a while? Give it a chance for a few centuries, and then reassess whether we humans have learned the plain common sense to treat others better, not needing a theocracy to enforce it? I've given y'all a lot to think about in this moon cycle that's all about examining whether the things you've been taught to believe are or are not truly healthy for you. So take the time to ponder this, and I'll see you next time.
And the seasons, they go round and round, and the painted ponies go up and down. We're riding on a carousel of time. We keep returning to life anew, fulfilling our soul's aim, and go round and round and round in the circle game.